Welcome back to Two Guys in the Outdoors.
Hey everyone, go ahead and like this show, subscribe, and leave a review.
Bob here, Jason,
Jason?
and then you'll recognize Guillermo again.
Hello, it's
So,
Guillermo. Thanks for having me again.
so he must have liked it last week, decided he was going to do it again this week. So,
Yeah.
all right. So last week we talked about getting out and hunting new areas and what you
hmm
need to do to prepare, whether it's a new area in the local place that you live, or it's a new area out of state, or what have you. Okay. This week we're going to talk about what maybe it's the differences between living in the city versus living in the country, living in a subdivision where all you have is a lot and you're a hunter
hmm
versus living out in the country where you may have several acres that you can hunt on. So, which I think we got that covered all the way around. We've got both aspects going on this call, matter of fact. So, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And Guillermo, I mean, you've lived in several different areas,
hmm
and you've lived in what I call town. I divide it up into two segments. You either live in the city because you got neighbors you can throw something at, and they're in their living room,
hmm
okay? Or you live in the country like what Jason does, where you have to scream really loud for the neighbors. So, what do you do to try to prepare to go hunting and some of the pitfalls maybe living in a subdivision and town area?
Okay. All right. So where I live now, I live in an area that is really should be zoned agricultural, but it used to be a cow pasture, and now most of the properties have between 2 acres to like 3 or 4 acres. One of them has 5 acres. And granted, I have a trail cam up on the top of the hill behind my house, looking back at the house, and I caught like a 6 point buck back there in velvet just last week, right? Because
Yep.
there's stuff growing there that they eat, but I'm not gonna be able to discharge a firearm back there because I think my county has like a 5 acre rural sort of thing, right? And then I got neighbors and sort of thing, so I wouldn't do that. Um, and my wife won't let me anyway. So it's gonna have to be the some place away from here. Now, the nearest area I can go hunt is about 30 minutes away, right?
Okay.
30 miles away roughly. So that means I have to prepare, I gotta pack up, I gotta get ready, and gotta head out there and it becomes more of a planning thing, right? In this environment. Um Now, if it would be archery and I had nobody asking me any questions, I could probably set up back there with a bow or a compound bow or a crossbow, and I could probably harvest some game back there, during archery season in my backyard, and it wouldn't be any issue with it, right? But at the same time, right, it's there's different limitations. So for me, it requires a little bit of planning and getting ready to move. If it's public land, the nearest one is 30 minutes away. If it's private land, the club I'm in, it's about the same, but there's more of them around me, right? So I've got to book it. I got to book a spot and got to schedule it, and I got to go and I got to make sure I'm there before a certain time, right? And I got to make sure I'm out by a certain time. Whereas public land is a little bit different. It's first come, first serve, and stay as long as you like. So that's different. Now,
Okay.
I do know that if you go further east from here, some of those like more densely populated suburban areas, they have like an urban archery season,
Hmm.
which I started to look into, and that's a whole different game right there, which has a whole set of really restrictive rules. So I don't know a lot about them, but I know they have a lot of vetting, a lot of testing, a lot of like you got to verify your equipment, you got to verify your aim, you got to verify your skill, and then it's still no guarantee you're going to have a great time because you're hunting somewhere in a suburb that's trying to that they're trying to cut down deer numbers. So once I learn more about that, I'll share more. But there is that
And we
opportunity.
do we do have we do have a show, one of our earlier shows
Mhm.
back a couple years ago that we did on urban archery hunting.
Wow.
So um so yeah, so the biggest thing is you got to plan a little bit,
Yeah.
okay? Versus so like Jason, you've got actually property right there. If you wanted to go um, before work, you could pop out, go in the backyard, hunt a little bit, and then go to work, right? So
Yeah, and
you could do it on the spur of the moment.
yeah, I'm very very fortunate with that. And my thing is, um, and Bob, you've been there. I mean, we've got a 100-yard shooting range, so I mean, it's easy for me to prepare.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Just set hunting aside. I can shoot a bow in my backyard. I can shoot a center fire rifle, um, basically in my backyard. So I'm very very fortunate, with that. So I'm kind of, I'm interested to see. I mean, I know what you do, Bob, but I'm kind of anxious to see what Guillermo does with, you know, I know there's a lot of planning, but just to practice, prepare.
Mm.
What do you do, and where do you go? What are some tips, that you can give, these new hunters or urban hunters, where to go, how to prepare, as well.
That's a good way to put it, Jason. Not to interrupt you, Guillermo, but I want to throw in
Mhm.
something here. So we're talking about urban hunters, and that's probably a better way to explain it. I mean, I've been an urban hunter since I've moved out of my mom and dad's house. Okay, where I always had to, I've always just lived on a lot. Okay, less than a quarter of an acre.
Mhm.
Okay, and so I've never been able to just practice things at my house and do all that stuff at my house. So Jason brings up a good point. So Guillermo, there's a lot of preparation, not only planning just to go hunting, and what you're going to do for that hunting trip, but I mean, archery season
Mhm.
and anything else, it takes a lot of practice,
Yeah.
whether you're using the tree stands or you're using your firearms or archery equipment or what have you. We preach all the time, practice. So what do you do to take care of that stuff when you weren't living on 2 acres?
Ah, a good point. So when I wasn't living on 2 acres, and going back to when I was living in South Florida, right? Um, you're very limited to where you can go, right? Forget about going to a park and setting up a target and taking your bow out there. Depending where you're at, you may get admirers and people want to join in. And other places, people will be horrified and they'll call the police because you're out there with a dangerous weapon. So what I would normally do is, luckily, in the places I was at, I would have to basically just go and pay for a range time, archery range, pay for that, go practice. And I mean, even the Bass Pro down in Fort Lauderdale was available, but that was $35 an hour to
Wow.
just get some range time, and that's typical South Florida. Everything's expensive, right? The public park, I think it was called Markham Park. That one was about, you still have to pay, I think it was almost $6 to park, to get into the park. And then you have to go at the range, pay another, like I think it was $12 to use the range. And then that had a time limit. So, but that one was a lot more set up for archery. So that's archery, right? So, and that's just, like pay as you go, as you need it. So my family at one point got into archery, so we joined the club and paid an annual fee, like 200 or 300 bucks, and then they ended up using it 4 or 5 times. So that kind of like broke even, but that was fine. But really, it's you'd have to use a range to get everything ready, and that was one thing. If I had to get ready for, say, muzzleloader season or anything general gun, again, it has to be a range. You got to go to a range and you sight things in, don't check the zero on your gun. Say you bought new ammo, so that process. So always a range. That's in Florida. Here, I still can't shoot firearms in my backyard, right? I mean, suppressor probably could, but I'm not gonna admit to that. So so the funny thing is that I have done archery in my backyard now without a problem, right? So we set up targets at different ranges, and we have a nice deck that's elevated, so I'm able to shoot level or even shoot down to mimic, for example, a tree stand. And that's worked out really well. And my wife loves archery, so she'll join in and do that. And then eventually she takes 4 or 5 shots and she's done, right? She prefers a recurve bow for that reason. So yeah, so then so that's archery. But here I still have to go to either like a public range, or I gotta go to like what's it called again? Clark's, I believe, is the only one nearby. And it's another sad thing. A lot of the ranges here, I heard about at least two of them have been shut down already, or they got sold or went out of business. There's another one that's going out of business as well, which is like it's under a transmission line easement, not far from here. So we're
Right.
losing these resources, right? Which is really, really concerning. But at the same time, it's like, so I have been rather fortunate to have access to Phelps when it's open, right? As part of the year, it's
Mhm.
available for sighting in. That's a water's management area. And then of course Clark's is available, but it's always busy. And then of course I got ranges that I can use in my hunt club that is part of the membership. So you still have to book that ahead of time. And when a season's coming up, you're going to be hard pressed to find time, a slot where you can go and actually sight in your gun. And you only get 2.5 hours per slot. So you really got to plan ahead, right?
So just staying on that stuff, practicing with your equipment then. So, I had some of the same issues where I used to live in some of the other states. For one place I was lucky enough that there was actually a full-fledged uh city
Mm-hmm.
managed archery area,
Well,
okay, where they had full from everything from just regular 10, 20, 30, 40 yard uh
nice.
uh targets, but then they also built a big, I think it was about 12 or 15-foot tall, uh, let's say
Oh,
deck
platform, yeah.
for practicing like you were uh, from a tree
Mhm.
stand. Okay, but that was lucky. Not everybody has that, right?
Right.
Um, here, living where I'm at now, you're right. It's hard pressed to try to find um, shooting ranges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for firearms. There are some public ones around here still with that, you're going to have to drive, 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes. Okay. Like you found one at Phelps there. It's not a bad shooting range. There's some for me, an hour over Charlottesville, or I can go 30 minutes the other way for a public one. It's actually in West Virginia.
Hmm.
Um, but you just got to look around. There's places. Okay. Jason and I know in some of the classes that we've done, I'm sure you've heard it, Guillermo, we can't find any place to shoot, or we can't find any place to do archery, or we can't find any place to hunt. Kind of all folds into place
Mm-hmm.
in the same place. So yeah, going out and looking for that. Finding maybe Isaac Walton League. I'm a member
Right.
of Isaac Walton League. Luckily enough, the league that I'm a member of, or the club that I'm a member of, they actually have an area. Uh, we don't call it a shooting range. We call it a side-in range,
Right.
insurance reasons, right? Um, but it's a place that we can shoot up to 50 yards and side it in, which is about all we're going to shoot in the area that we're in. Um, so, so yeah, trying to find them places um,
Yep.
that's close enough, and you got to be willing to drive. So if it's worth something to you, right? If
Right.
it's worth doing, then you're worth putting the time in.
Well, the other thing, I'm sorry to interrupt. The other thing that's important is that not every place allows shotgun patterning.
Yep.
So that's a very important detail that we all forget, right? So forget about the NRA range in Fairfax. You can't do that there. You can't do that, I think, in what's Bull Run. You can't do patterning in Bull Run either. And they won't allow that. And if you have a pistol grip shotgun, they won't allow that either. I don't know why, whatever reason it is, but they don't allow that. I aim to change that, I think. But anyway, and then the other reason that they have is places like Shady Grove Outfitters, which is not far from a great sporting clays, trap and ski.
Yep.
They have a patterning board there, but I'm not sure they're going to stay in business because I think the utility is going to take back that easement. Dominion might take it back, so I'm not sure, but that's what we heard a few months ago when I went to that training weekend with with all of you, right? So that's a concern, right? Because now that's another resource we're losing. I mean, we really enjoy clays, So again, something else is gone, right? And even when you do a search, I notice when you do a search on Apple Maps versus Google Maps, you're gonna get different results. And I noticed that up here in Virginia. So I've gone to Florida and I do a search and everything lines up, including the ones that are out of business. Whereas here, something has been done to the search engine optimization that they don't turn up. So even the ones that are in business.
Hmm.
So something to look into as well. So it's odd.
So you got to do your due diligence to try to figure
Yes.
out where they're at. So,
Yes. Yes. And use different search engines to find them. So that's the other
mhm.
challenge there as well. But
But
yeah,
there are.
And,
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Jason.
and and just um, having conversations,
Mm-hmm.
just like we're having now can potentially open the door for some individuals that are having problems finding
Mm-hmm.
um and I know because I work with a bunch of those guys. A lot of these clubs up in the Northern Virginia area, they allow shooting, they have skeet fields, they have
Right.
all kinds of things, but um, a lot of times they're not open,
Right.
meaning the membership is closed. And I talked to a couple of
Mm-hmm.
our volunteers, and it's like a 5 year waiting to get a membership in some of
Mm-hmm.
these places. So, and maybe some of the Isaac Walton leagues up in that area may be in that situation. I'm not sure. Because I always point people to, you know, private clubs, Isaac Walton leagues. I know there's a lot of archery clubs
Mm-hmm.
throughout Virginia. Membership is not that expensive, but you're limited to only archery equipment when you join one of those clubs. But
Now I'm going to mention something since I am a member of Isaac Walton League. Just so everybody knows, everybody that is listening to this, um, just because you join one Isaac Walton doesn't mean you're a member of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's one thing. And not all Isaac Waltons have the same amenities.
that's
Okay,
right.
I'm lucky enough to have one that has 100 and some odd acres to hunt on. There's a lot of conservation because that's what they're based on going on. So, and there's a house and uh, an area to shoot in. Okay, but the one here in Harrisonburg, where I live, it's much smaller and it just has a little fishing and a barn. Okay, so not all of them will have availability for hunting or shooting type stuff. Okay,
That's
so you
right.
got to do your due diligence to figure out where it is. So Jason, you bring up a good point. Let's go ahead and go there. Um, talking, having discussions like this, trying to figure out where to go. Um, that also applies to figuring out where you're going to hunt, right? So which you may have to approach somebody, private ground or join in a club or what have you. So Guillermo, how would you go about, if you wanted to hunt some private ground or you want to try to get into a hunt club or
Mm-hmm.
a shooting club or something like that that's membership only and all that stuff. How do you go
Well,
about that?
well, the way I found my hunt club was through Yelp. And I did a Yelp, a Google search, and an Apple search, and all of that Chrome, for example. And where they all intersected was okay. So this one exists, and then I found them on Yelp. I found the reviews, and then looked at Google reviews, and then ultimately went to their website. Okay, they exist, they're legit. And then I finally reached out because they're not gonna publish prices right away because the price is gonna be a big surprise. So I reached out to a few of them, the ones that responded. I went and evaluated them, and then I compared, how many properties you have access to versus how many members. And then you begin to ask questions, right? Especially these private clubs, you ask questions like, okay, how much does this cost per year? How much is the initiation fee? Usually a lot, right?
Hmm.
You're gonna pay basically twice on your first year, and then after that, your renewal is gonna be a lot less, right? So it's a heck of a commitment. And then after that, right, I've never had a problem in the hunt club actually getting access to the spots I want. now that I know the spots, but you're not gonna get any kind of mentorship. You're not gonna get any kind of guidance. They're gonna give you a bunch of like badly copied, Adobe Acrobat files to kind of read through, and the rules are gonna be spread out across 5 different documents. I personally, what I did, I got all that, put it on optical character recognition on Adobe Acrobat Pro, and stuffed it into ChatGPT, and then I made it work for me. And then I asked a question, then it got me the answers I needed. But that's how I did it. Not everybody does that.
So I'm going to add one other thing to that people need to ask.
Mhm.
Okay, not only for the dues and everything, but is there mandatory work days?
It
And
depends on the club.
if you don't make the mandatory work day or the work day, what's that going to cost you?
Right.
Right.
Very
So,
good point. So on this club, there's no mandatory work days, but if you do work days, they credit you towards your renewal.
exactly. Yeah.
So right now, I am building, kind of what we talked about before, I'm building an ADA compliant elevated deer blind. I'm building like a few of them, right?
Mhm.
So they are willing to credit all the materials, as long as I have receipts, all the materials for that elevated deer blind with the ramp, the wheelchair ramp, and all that stuff, towards a membership.
Okay.
And the sad thing is that a lot of the membership is aging. It's a strongly aging population that they still want to go hunt, but they have mobility issues, they can't walk, they fall off a tree, and they can really cannot walk. And so I'm making that possible. So that has been rather, that's been really looked upon very favorably, right? So they're willing to reimburse in that regard. And I really want to do the same thing with the DWR, right? I want to facilitate, for example, some ADA facilities to make that happen. I used to do that in Florida for the Florida FWC, and we had that set up, right? And that was great. But it's a lot harder to do it in Florida because of the environment and that sort of thing. But here, I mean, I see great opportunities for that. But anyway,
So I
so
want to key in on that right there. So you're actually you're providing a service,
mhm,
okay, for a group that will allow you to hunt and shoot in that area, basically. Okay. And reason why I say it like that, I know you're doing it and they're going to reduce your dues and all that stuff. But think about it the way I talked about. It's the same approach that you would do if you driving through, you're doing some, you know, road scouting,
mhm.
when you found a place, hey, this may be a good place to hunt, and you go up to the local farmer, the person that you know that owns that, and you start talking to them
Yeah,
about it,
yeah,
right? And you do the same thing.
right.
Hey, what can I do to help you out around here? Can I work on your fence rows here?
Right.
I noticed they were in need of some work back in the backside.
Mhm. And
So,
that and right and the way you make contact some of those owners is sometimes going through the tax rolls. Actually, OnX has a pretty helpful feature that facilitates that because it tells you who the owners are of other properties, and then at that
mhm.
point you have a mailing address, and then you're better able to reach out to them at that point.
And most of the apps like that has that. I know
Right.
I use the Hunt Stand, and a Hunt Stand has it also, so I can go anywhere and find out who owns what property in what area.
Yep. And
Um,
I think one of the surefire, not surefire, but one of those likely yes you're gonna get is a cattle farmer, whether it's dairy or meat, that struggles with the coyotes.
yep,
Hmm.
And you'll probably get like a good yes from them, and you tell them, listen, I have a gun with a suppressor and a thermal sight. And they say, you're more than welcome to go hunt with me so you can see what it's like. And more than likely you're gonna get, they're gonna not only invite you, they're gonna want to come with you. And I have not had that happen to me yet. I had it happen in Florida quite a bit, right? And for them, they had issues with coyotes and feral hogs, and they were just really enthusiastic about that to the point that they end up buying their own. And then they kept inviting me back to go to their land, and then they invited my friends, and and they still keep going. I mean, it's over there on the Gulf Coast of Florida, but they still go.
yeah.
So so
So
really,
you're
eh,
you're providing a
right,
service for them. You're helping them out, but
right,
then you also get to do something you love to do anyway,
right. Well,
right?
yeah,
But there's one key thing you got to be willing to do. You got to be willing to knock on doors, or I should say two key things. You got to be willing to knock on doors, and you also got to be willing to accept a no.
hmm
Because some people are just going to say flat out, no, no questions, shut the door,
Right.
and you're just standing there, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, and there's the whole debate between sending a nice letter versus showing up in person. I mean, I'd rather send a letter with contact info and then say, and then give them the chance to open that door to allow communications rather than just showing up on their property, because I kind of like always, I'm a little leery about that.
yeah, especially you don't want to go rolling up with the music
No,
blaring, all
no,
camoed out, and your lights blaring and all that stuff. So you got
no,
to be respectful if you want to be respected, right?
right. And there are times where you're driving around the road and you see cattle and you see like a damaged fence, right?
Yep.
Maybe, hey, you know what? You pull over and kind of like see if you can reach the owners of the property. Say, hey, listen, I found a damaged fence. What's going on? And you may find contact info on Onyx, and maybe I'll offer to like repair that part of the fence while they get there, right?
Mhm.
Or at least stand there. And I've seen that work as well, right? It's. I'm not saying just to use that to gain that leverage, but rather it's a great way to make that relationship.
And there's the word.
Yeah,
I was wondering
relationship.
when we were going to say it.
Hmm.
It's creating that relationship.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know Jason, you do that a lot. You talk to a lot of different people and hunting in different areas and creating them relationships to hunt around the state.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of no's, and I've gotten, and I'm glad, it came up. I'm a big predator hunter,
Hmm.
coyote hunter. I'm a big trapper, and you know, you can get permission on people's property to hunt coyotes, long before you can get permission to do anything else.
Yep.
And you go in and you predator hunt on their property, just like Guillermo said. You offer for them to go along with you. You close the gates. You do everything that you're supposed to do, and then the next thing you know, they're letting you deer hunt. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's that building that relationship.
Hmm.
And I just think a lot of our hunters, don't look at it that way. And I think that's a very important
Yep.
piece is building that relationship, offer a service, um, to have access to their property. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Now, one thing,
and
Jason, I mean, yeah, that's all true. And we will get plenty of no's, like you said, right?
Hmm.
But sometimes then no's turns into yeses,
you
right?
know, I yeah, absolutely. I was hunting. I was trapping one person's farm, and the next thing you know, they're talking. The farmers are talking back and forth, and then next thing you know, I'm invited to
Oh
another
wow.
piece of property. And so it's providing a service, it's being respectful, it's building that relationship. And I think that's key if you want to get onto private property.
Mhm.
So I think that's very, very important.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know, get out in the outdoors and hunt, have some fun, and keep it simple. Don't complicate matters.